We're good to go. Well, welcome everybody. This masterclass that we're having on patient experience is really to address an important issue in our field, and that is that clinical excellence is expected by the patient. And what patients actually remember is how you made them feel. And for the next hour, we're going to talk about how one practice changed that and how it changed them as well. For our panelists today, the patient is the hero of this story, and everyone on this call is the guide. When you're the doctor or you work in the practice, you are the guide and the patient is the hero. And just want to quickly introduce our group today. We have Dr. Arthur Cummings, as well as his practice manager, Liz Hogan from Wellington Eye Clinic in Dublin, Ireland. So good to have both of you. And then we also have Celine Reibel, who many of you know. Celine is an outstanding advocate for refractive surgery, as well as guide to help practices improve how they do what they do. She's been doing it for many years. I had the privilege of meeting her as well as Liz several years ago when I was invited to teach a day-long master class. So our hope today, Arthur, is that we compress in an hour some of the great things that we talked about back at when we had ESCRS in Milan several years ago.
That's right.
So with that, Arthur, walk us back. Okay, before any of this, what was the gap that you saw between how good the clinical outcomes were that you were creating and how patients actually experience what's going on in the practice?
Yeah, Sharif, I think that's something that will resonate with everyone on the call. They've seen this before, where you get a patient where you are 100% happy with the way things have gone. On the chart, they're doing as well as they can be, and they're just doing great, yet they're not happy. So that makes you think about what the whole experience looks like. I think another thing that made me think about experience strongly was we've been thinking about it for a long time. And thanks to you, we've been exposed to things like Beyond Bedside Manner, the ESCRS courses, different courses. And something that happens in the refractive world, maybe not every other world, but in the refractive world, is people continuously market on technology. And eventually it all just sounds the same. It looks the same. It's the best surgeon, the most experienced surgeon. Everything is just the best, and it just becomes confusing to everyone. And so one way to really differentiate is by the patient experience. And Liz will tell you, we'll tell you later, is how improving the patient experience, in fact, improves the clinic experience. Everyone who works there enjoys it way more when patients are having a good time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to get to dive into that in a few minutes, which is great because that's what it's all about. And we've heard it said before, you can't have a great patient experience if you don't have a great team. You've got to have a great team. And this notion of bonding around this is something we'll explore in a little bit. But I want to go back to something we've talked about before, and that's AI and the impact of AI. And I remember in a call we had 6-8 months ago, you talked about AI and what you thought the impact of AI might be. But I want you to comment on AI just as a technology and what you think it could have in terms of a leveling effect. Remember that conversation?
I do. So AI, generally speaking, has very good value in our practices, especially as AI scribes helping us with look at a lot of data at one time. It has value there. I think further into helping us with diagnosis and that type of thing, that will still come. I think in the marketing sphere, I have a bit of a concern. I mean, AI at the end of the day is going to base its thought process on what you've fed it. And if everyone's saying we're the best, we're the this, we're the that, we've got the latest technology, before you know it, everyone sounds and looks exactly the same. And that's not a differentiator. That's something else, but it's not a differentiator.
Right. It becomes another set of table stakes. And well, you have to have this to be efficient and to be responsive to patients who reach out at 2 a.m. to learn about your services. AI can really help. But I really resonated with your comment that it's going to actually have a commoditizing effect. It's going to make every practice look very similar because everyone can have the same technology and everyone can have the same AI capability. And that doesn't do much to differentiate us, does it?
No.
That's good. So, you also said a line after you went through the program that we created based on the book Beyond Bedside Manner. You talked about how you said we weren't broken. We weren't broken, but tell me more. Reprise that if you would.
Yeah, two things I want to say there is we certainly went broken. The clinic was working well. people who worked there liked working there. But it didn't sound as though it was at the best it could be. So we weren't broken, but even in our clinical outcomes, if they're outstanding, they can be better. So I think there's always a value in trying to do whatever you're doing, do it better and make it better for everyone.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's the first thing. The other thing that I was thinking there was that I've been to so many meetings on my own. I get really excited about something and I bring it back, and I'm not as good as the original speaker at exciting my team about it. So I certainly like the idea of when we learn something, either the team learns it together or we all do it together, and then everyone's on board from the word go. From the word go, everyone's on board, as opposed to someone who's a leader in the process and trying to get everyone else engaged. It's great when everyone sees the issue and jumps on board at the same time.
Right. And that's a big problem that every doctor on this call has experienced, where they're excited about something and that just didn't translate once they got back home. We'll get to that more in a little bit. I want to bring Liz in. And Liz, you said it. Every team, including yours, says they want to give 5-star service. But what's the gap between wanting to do this and actually delivering it day to day?
Yeah, I think and just to pick up on what Arthur was saying, that we certainly weren't broken, but I think maybe for me, the gap that I noticed was there was a tiny bit of an elevation when a family member was in or when a best friend was in. And it was that little gap that there shouldn't have been any gap. And so it was being able to say, and as soon as we kind of said that to the team, they were like, oh yeah, we do. And so every patient should get that same experience that our family gets when our family and friends come in to the clinic. And so, yeah, that was probably that little room for improvement that we were able to identify. But then I suppose, like, again, what we were talking about, and again, when we started with it, it's the employee experience. We also recognize that on the days that family members were in, on the days that friends were in, the team were also that little bit more excited and it's a bit more enjoyable. And maybe probably one of the most kind of like ironic things is, like, it's actually nicer to provide an elevated experience than it is to provide an okay experience.
Right.
And so actually enhancing the patient experience has also really enhanced the employee experience as well for us.
Well, and it sounds like, in that thing where you had a VIP came in, and a lot of doctors will have a special code, a special color for the chart for the VIP patient, right? I think your point is that every patient should be treated like a VIP.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the problem is that if you don't have that shared language, that shared understanding of what we're trying to do, Arthur, that you were talking about a minute ago, you can have good intentions, but they'll just stay as an intention instead of an actual execution. And when you think about what's at stake here, I just summarize it this way, that the risk isn't in refractive surgery. The risk is not a bad outcome. The risk is being excellent and forgettable.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's the risk. That's, in effect, what AI could have for us. If everyone's getting an AI bot as part of their experience as a patient, well, that's not memorable anymore. So we have a plan, and I want to introduce this plan carefully and really want Liz and Arthur to do most of the talking. But this plan is called PX90, and PX90 is not it's not a course. It's really a toolkit. That's what it's designed to do. And I'll just grab this image. This is the playbook for PX90 that Arthur and Liz and their entire team used to help guide them along. But Liz, when you brought this in, what did PX90 do? What did it give the team that the intention alone didn't?
I think it was exactly that. It was the toolkit. I think the number one kind of thing for implementing it for us was creating that space for the conversation. So our approach was to close the clinic for an afternoon. We came together for an afternoon. The team had previously done some background work, and it was like they were turning up for school with all their little workbooks on their lap. But it was that toolkit, and it was I suppose it got the conversations started for us. I think for every clinic, there are going to be different areas that they'll want to improve in, or different areas that need attention. And for us, it helped us really identify where those areas were, but then have a conversation that made sense for how our patient flow is, and also made sense for the population and the general, kind of I suppose, common characteristics between the patients that we see and what we know patients have come to appreciate.
So Arthur basically delegated to you as the practice manager the implementation of this, but this had an unusual start. You had an opportunity that presented itself with Eileen and her injury.
Yes.
I want you to tell that story because it's just a great story and how this helped you.
Yes, I also think it's being very honest. I think sometimes with some of these things, and as amazing as the workbook is when you get into it, sometimes it's knowing where to start. It can also be the challenge, and can sometimes feel like a bigger thing. But what actually, fortunately for us, but very unfortunately for one of our technicians, Aileen, she dislocated her elbow playing sports. It meant she was not able to work in her traditional role in the clinic, but she was able to do some working from home and some PC work. So she actually did the full PX90 course herself first, and then broke it down into, I suppose, prioritizing the chapters and the workouts in terms of roles. So we were able to break it into, I suppose, more digestible pieces for the team. And we then scheduled that afternoon session where we all came together for, I think it was 3 or 4 hours. And we had a session and we went through it. But at that point, the team had already, and it felt easier. I suppose it's a psychological thing as well. When they got an email saying, okay, instead of having to do all of them, you just start here, and they had a little pathway to follow. So yeah, very unfortunate for poor Aileen, but worked out really nicely for us in that it allows us to give a structure to the session.
Yeah, well, it was great. And you having someone actually preview it helped know how to translate the course content to make it work for the whole team, which is fantastic. And by the way, just as a side note to everyone listening, Eileen had documented this and sent it to me, and that's going to help future practices because we can take that same learning that we got from Wellington Eye Clinic and allow others to benefit, so they get going faster as well. So please give a special thank you to Eileen for helping with that. That was great.
Sharif,
yeah, Arthur.
Can I jump in for a second? I just want to say something. Is when you and I first spoke about the course, and you may be aware of it, and I was really keen to start, Liz was still on maternity leave, and we had because we were still having staff meetings without Liz being there. But we decided to delay starting it until Liz was back. Liz is a superb leader. She's got the respect of the entire team. And I think when they see her work ethic and the way she gets things done, and she's got managers to help her, and that made a big difference. I think whatever you do within the practice, you need a champion to champion the course. And not only, stand like a rah-rah girl, but someone who is really leading it and doing it. And I think that's probably the best advice I can give for people who want to do the course is get someone who's responsible for the overview of the entire course and the execution of it.
Yes. And it really does bring up a couple key points. Any kind of change effort we have in a practice, anytime a doctor says, we want to do something differently, it's so important just to avoid a couple things. First of all, even though like with this program, everyone gets a login, okay? You don't just distribute the logins and say, have at it. You've got to have this leadership. You're absolutely right. And also, we want the doctor to participate, particularly in something as critical as how we take care of patients and how we're going to change that. So this leadership quotient is absolutely incredible. And you noticed something when you were listening in on the debrief about ideas going back and forth. You were remotely listening, and what were you hearing, Arthur, when you were listening?
Yeah, I was really sorry to miss the debrief. I mean, I was really keen to be there, but my schedule was quite busy. I was traveling. The rest of the team could make that day, so that's the reason why I said go ahead, and I can dial in when I can. But my flight was delayed for like 3 or 4 hours, so I heard the entire course going through security and whatnot. But what I heard there was fascinating, and that's what I mentioned at the start. Is on that call, I heard every single one of the team, offer an opinion, become engaged. So it just made me realize that if you want to start something, it's always better to start it with the entire team on board and learn together, as opposed to someone trying to dictate to someone else how to do it. So yeah, people spoke up. I heard things I hadn't said before. The ideas were very diverse, and when you start having that sort of conversation and psychological safety in a room like that, people share their ideas, and some are great and some aren't. And it's never about that. It's just about which ideas are the ones that are going to work best on their merit in the clinic.
Well, and that's it. And just to take a step back, again, we know how hard it is to make change occur in the short term and to make it lasting change. And what I'm hearing from you and from other practices that have already been through this in its first year is that's absolutely happening. And I guess if we've got something called PX90 that is moving the thing that is hardest to move, which is engagement, right? Getting people to actually care. Um, I want everyone here to really appreciate what happened at Wellington Eye Clinic, because this wasn't the boss saying you must do this or you will face consequences. That's not how you guys went about it. You guys went about it differently. And Liz, take us to that debrief day. You already said that everyone had already gone through the right sections for their functional area, but now you're in debrief day, and take us in there and paint the picture for us.
Yeah, so I suppose in the weeks leading up to the debrief day, the team knew based on their role which modules they needed to cover in which order. We had kind of broken it down into weekly ones for them. So I think taking the kind of big task out of it and making it digestible definitely helped. But then when it came to that day, and I'm sure for any other practice managers listening in, that sweet treats go a long way. So we had some nice treats for the day. It was, the afternoon was cleared. We tried to make the session as fun as possible. And it actually was. It was really enjoyable. And I know myself and Arthur and Brendan spoke afterwards, and we were all so pleased with how much the team engaged with it, but they actually all really enjoyed the session themselves. We started it by, I suppose it was important to me to frame it in the way that, the employee experience was equally as important as the patient experience. And nobody who works in our line of work ever wants to be receiving a patient complaint. I think we all probably feel them a lot more than we should. And when we get them, you can focus in on them. And so, yeah, it was kind of just reminding them that we want to be able to provide this amazing experience, but we also want to be able to provide that to our employees as well. So and in a very light-hearted way, there was a very popular reality TV show at the time that I would say about 80% of the team were talking about in the kitchen. So that reality TV show has a commitment ceremony. So we jokingly made them do a commitment ceremony at the start. We made them say, look, please get involved. This is about you. It's about all of us coming together. And exactly what Arthur has said, it was about the team getting involved and throwing out ideas and not being afraid to get involved. And as natural with every team, there are those who talk at every meeting and there are those who don't talk at any meetings, and people who fall somewhere in between. So we also use some tools to be able to allow them to, for the first kind of couple of questions, to be able to allow them to engage remotely, if you like. So they had their phones, they scanned a QR code, they were able to put words in. And I think that kind of just loosened it up a little bit, and it just helps the team realize, actually, the more I contribute here, the more we're going to get out of it. But we used the PX90 workbook to frame the session. We talked through, I suppose I had gone through the program as well. And so there were a couple of things that I felt were probably more relevant for me in my role as practice manager that were less relevant for the team as a group. So we focused on the ones that were most relevant to, I suppose, the day-to-day. And for each kind of section, we didn't do it in the exact workout format because they had obviously completed the modules. But we focused in on the key points and being able to take action items from each section. And yeah, we were able from every section to pick out the couple of things that we were going to change from the Monday.
So you had told me, Liz, that this was the most time the practice had ever dedicated specifically to patient experience, not only the debrief session, but all the preparation that people did in their groups and individually ahead of time. So yeah, why did concentrating on it like that matter?
I suppose maybe because talking about it and everybody like that, we all were very aligned on the fact that we wanted to provide an excellent service, but maybe because the other options hadn't worked and that there was still a little gap. And so it felt like when we went through this that it felt like, in the grand scheme of things, dedicating that couple of hours one afternoon to something that actually turned into a nice employee benefit because they had a lovely afternoon, that it was worth giving it a try. But yeah, really it was so beneficial to do it that way, because we came out, and what we decided to do from each section was to pick a short-term goal, a medium term, and then a long term. So we kind of were able to start with, what's the thing we can change from tomorrow? What's the thing we'll work towards maybe over the next couple of months? And what's the thing that we'll work towards kind of bigger picture? And so some of the modules that talk about like the physical spaces and that we weren't going to redecorate the next day, but they're things that we can work towards maybe over longer periods of time.
Arthur, there were two words that you shared in our earlier debrief when we debriefed right after you'd gone through the program, and they were these words. The program was structured and it was scalable, two S words. Could you just elaborate on those two so everyone understands what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think Liz touched on that very nicely. Is when you have a wish list and you all want to do the same thing, but there's no common shared pathway to get there, it goes in all directions. It's like a bit of a spaghetti bowl. And the moment you have something that's structured and there's a time frame to it, everyone knows where you're going. You're on the same path, maybe slightly different parts of it. You're going to come together and get this whole thing. So I think structure plays a huge role. And then I think in terms of scalable, what I meant by scalable is I can't think that there's a practice on the planet that won't benefit from the course. And any of the practices on the call, if they went through the course, would very likely find something slightly different to what we did. So it's all about the dynamic of your team, the empathy of your team, their alignment with the program leads to a unique, and now it starts making you unique. So the team is different. It's not an AI version of some team. Every team will be unique in the way they work together, but they've got a goal and a pathway to get to the patient experience. So I don't know that if every single patient experience was the same, I guess then you're not differentiating anymore. So I think it needs to be unique, but this is just a tool to help you get the best one you can with the team and the people on your team.
Now, Liz, days after the session, because I remember you telling me this, people were still bringing you new ideas. Is that still happening?
Yes. And actually, we only had our most recent staff meeting last week. And I think the way, again, that we framed it was that like we weren't coming together in that session to fix a problem. We were coming together to open a conversation, and it was something that we were going to continually try to build on. And so at each of the staff meetings, we've added elements of it. And it's something that, yeah, we just keep checking back in, saying, is there anything that's working really well? Is there anything that you've thought of since? Because I suppose as the months have gone on, different things change, or different processes change, or maybe there's a new procedure. And so there's different elements that require attention, I suppose, on an ongoing basis. So we've just built it in.
Yeah, so it's just part of your normal routine now. We're going to talk about patient experience and how we can help improve it. And Arthur, you've noticed, because we're now almost a year out since when you guys did this, almost a year. You've noticed, what have you noticed in your patient reviews since you guys went this program?
I'll get back to that now in a moment, but I first want to tell you what we've noticed from the team.
Okay.
So since this meeting, how many team members bring ideas forward? And some of the ideas are off the charts, amazing. And some have made a life-changing difference for a patient. There's one story of a patient who was unbelievably nervous. Brendan was doing the case, but he was so nervous that he docked like 8 times or 9 times. The patient just couldn't lie down. He was incredibly nervous. And one of our optometrists who was in the laser suite, thinking back on the course, I thought, hang on a second, I'm going to try and personalize this for this patient, and said, is there any particular music you like? And the patient said, death metal. And none of us knew what that was, but they went online, Spotify knew what it was, and they started playing a song for him, and he completely lay down on the bed as though he'd been drugged by something. It was dead quiet. Procedure went perfectly well. And it was one example. Another one was not that long after the course. Many of us read the book. There's a book called Unreasonable Hospitality.
Yes.
Yeah, and Brendan had read this book after doing the course. And so most of us read that book, just about the ways you can make things better. And also the way you think about things. So Brendan was in a restaurant at a meeting in Vienna a little while ago, and a diner drops their fork. And so, he figures out, he's seeing this from a distance, and he's thinking, what is going to happen now? Some guy's going to walk to the kitchen, get a new fork. But meanwhile, the waiter comes by, opens up his jacket, takes out a fork, and he notices in his jacket pocket, he's got this little fold, not this folder, but this pouch with all these different utensils. And then he sees everyone has that. So design also plays a role. They put this design element in that if someone drops a fork, it's not a problem. And lo and behold, the diner gets a better experience, but so does the staff member. The staff member solving a problem is seemed to be a hero. So yeah, those things all play a very important role. Now, Sharad, I took a very long time, Sharif, to answer that question. You came back. What did our reviews? Yeah, they've changed.
Before you would go into reviews, let's just unpack that a little more, okay? Because what you talked about, whether it's in a restaurant with a drop fork or in an operating suite with a nervous patient, is situational awareness. That's what it's called. We have situational awareness, just like they do the World Cup, the best players in soccer out there. Situational awareness. We have to have it in our roles so we know how to respond. Because for that patient, it was death metal, not Valium, that relaxed them, right?
Exactly.
And everyone feels better. The patient feels better, and the team member solving a problem feels better. So great for that. But I would just say you can't script that. Okay, you cannot script that. That is culture. That is culture at work. And that's why Celine, who I get to introduce in a moment, is so excited about bringing this into Europe, because this is the hardest thing for a doctor and for the practice is how do we make the culture better, right? Everyone says it, but few do it. And now we've got something that seems to be working. Back to what I was asking you, reviews. What have you noticed now versus maybe a year or two ago in the reviews you're getting from patients online?
Yeah, the most obvious thing, I think Liz knows more details about exactly the metrics of them, but what I can tell you is reviews have gone from being, nice clinic, like the doctor, got a good outcome, to suddenly becoming way longer, way more specific, and hardly ever not mentioning more than one or two people, often mentioning 4, 5, 6 people in the review. And so it does a lot of things. I mean, it gets the whole team fired up because it acknowledges what they've done from a patient perspective. It's authentic. You can't make that up. And anyone reading that can see it's authentic. So no, the reviews have changed very much. But Liz, I know you've looked at that in more detail, and it's part of what you do. What have you seen from the metrics point of view?
Exactly the same, that it really has focused in, it's far more personalized, like the reviews themselves are personalized, which is reflective of hopefully a more personalized experience. But actually on the metrics point, and it was chatting with Sharif before this call, was that we actually, and Sharif had a great suggestion to actually quantify those in terms of changes, which we haven't actually done yet, but it's something that we plan to add in. But like our rating was always great, which is great. And as we were saying, I suppose we weren't broken. We weren't trying to fix that or boost that, or there was no I suppose metric that we needed to hit from that point of view. We were always aiming for the 5-star service as everyone else. But it's the fact that I suppose from my point of view, reading through them, if I was looking as a prospective patient, they're far more, not that they weren't genuine, but they appear a lot more because they're very personalized. They, as you say, often are naming the team and saying the couple of team members that they specifically want to thank, which is really, really nice. And actually so much so, it dawned on me one day in one of our conversations again on the patient experience and trying to let the team know how well they were doing, that I suppose it's rare for my role and obviously for Arthur's role in the clinic. For certain roles it makes sense to go on and continually be checking the reviews, but that isn't necessarily the case for the entire team. And so what we did was we added some display tablets into our kitchen that automatically pull in the reviews so that the team are getting the opportunity to read all the lovely comments as well. And yeah, they've even noticed a big difference.
Beautiful. I mean, that's fabulous. And it shows up in the reviews, and we will see that. We can quantify that. We're going to be continuing to track this at your practice, and I encourage others to do it to do it as well. I mean, it's not, the big moment is losing glasses, right? That's clearly an incredible transformative thing. But as you said, Arthur, in the beginning of the call, we've got to make it more than just about the surgery. So it's not just the big moments, it's the small moments. And Liz, I'd like you to give us a recent, just an ordinary example, nothing fancy or dramatic, just one that shows this shift.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably, maybe for me personally, that was probably the biggest lesson, that there was nothing fancy or dramatic, maybe in general. It was a collection of really small, subtle changes that have made a big difference. And I suppose in thinking about it today, I wanted to, like that again, share some examples, but it's small things around, instead of asking the patient, so patients coming in for their initial consultation, we're documenting some of those personal details. So for example, and we talked about it with the team, that they maybe play cards, and there's a card game called Bridge, which it's not overly popular. It's not the most common hobby, but it is one that patients play. And so documenting that, and when the patient comes back post-operatively, then instead of saying, and how's the near vision, it's, and how are you finding playing bridge now after surgery? And so it's that tiny shift, and it's a collection of those little things that are making a big difference. And like, there was another example where there was a patient who, naturally, as part of the medical record, the demographics are captured, and the patient's occupation was a lawyer. But on the day of surgery, Brendan was able to come out and say, and how is the coaching going? Like, this is going to be great for your face-to-face clients, because as part of the consultation, the patient had mentioned that they were planning a career change and that they were becoming a life coach. And so it's those little changes to be able to show, and again, it's in the workout, but to know that we have heard the patient, that we have listened to what their needs are, which is so important, obviously in refractive surgery, but being able to really demonstrate that we've listened as a team, not just as the individual that you spoke to in that moment.
It's incredible. It's these little stories that may not seem important. Doctors listening to say, well, what's the big deal? And I would say it's the little things that make the big deal in the patient's mind. And Arthur, we're talking about this. It's not just about attitude. It's about designing a system to be able to make these changes and doing things. And you've told me in the past that you think of that it's what patients and Google say you are that really are what you are, right? And so how does the system itself that you're building help shape that experience?
Yeah, so we've learned a lot from the Ophthalmopreneurs course, and the very first one they had was about what is your identity, and they said it's well, the identity is it's a combination of three things: what you say you are, what your patients say you are, and then what Google says you are. So that's what your identity is. And then Amanda asked me this year, Brendan and I, to do one on what shapes your identity. And when we really thought about it, we realized is you can be the nicest doctor on the planet. You can have the best systems in place. But if the system around you, the organizational structure, does not support you, well, then guess what? Even though you think it's gone okay, and the team thinks it's gone okay, the patient has felt a disconnect. Something hasn't worked over here. So I'll give you an example, something along the lines of patients coming in for appointments. We have 8 optometrists, and instead of making appointments for an optometrist, what happens is patients come in, and as they come in, whoever's free takes them. So there's never a delay in the patient being seen. Another one would be the likes of the system, the organization obviously wants patients who've had surgery already to be discharged and leave the clinic at some point so that someone new can come in. But you as the doctor are saying, no, I'm not done yet. I need more follow-up. This patient's not where I want them to be. So if there's a disconnect there with, or time's the biggest one, especially with practices corporatizing, where suddenly this patient needs 30 minutes, but I've been allocated 10 minutes. Now, even though you might get what you want to say in 10 minutes, you're not hearing the patient, and they feel that experience. So I think you need a system around you that's flexible. And so that's why Liz looks at how we work, how everyone works. So my schedule looks different to Brendan's, looks different to our fellows, to accommodate what we need to do. And I think when the system allows you to be your best, and you're not fighting the system all the time, I mean, everyone has a better experience. But critically, the patient does. They don't feel this friction.
We call that, how do we make it frictionless, or how do we reduce friction, is exactly what you were talking about. Well, now we need to bring in Celine, because Celine's been listening very patiently, and most of you on the call know Celine, and I'm a big fan of Celine's. But Celine, you held off on talking to your own doctors that you do consulting to and that you want to help until you saw this actually work at Wellington. Okay, now that you have, how are you going to introduce PX90 in Europe?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I held down because I didn't want to come in with a brochure on the playbook and just say, get a promise and whatever. So I wanted to see how Wellington was going to be, transformed. And obviously and completely, I've seen it now and I see how it works. So I'm ready to go down. What I like about the program, it's not a top down. It's really, finding a champion in your clinic, as Liz said, and find advocates for your team. And the surgeon has to be ready. Also, that's a big part of it. And then you're just going to guide your team through the program. So we're going to start close because the program is in English. So it's easier, UK and Ireland. But we'll work through other languages when we get demands. But yeah, I really wanted to see how it works before going out with it. I've seen it in the US with you, obviously, because we've been coaching together.
Yes, yes, that's terrific. And I want both you and Arthur to answer this question. What does it take for a practice to be ready versus making excuses to wait until we're ready?
Celine, can I jump in? Because
Yeah, you go.
I learned this like 10 years ago, and I learned it too late in my career. Is that I said this earlier, I referred to it earlier, where if you think you want to teach your team something and you learn the skill set and then try and teach them, that's not as good a situation as you're all learning together. So the best way for you to learn to get to know your practice is do a course like this. That's when everyone starts, you're seeing them, you see their personalities, you see what turns them on, you see what they dislike. So I think you'll learn a lot about your team by actually doing the course, not just about the patient experience, but about your team. So I think if we had this course when we started the practice, we would have done it then,
Yeah, yeah. Celine, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think the practice they're saying we're not ready are actually the ones who are going to benefit from it right now much quicker. And I've had surgeons telling me, I'm just starting, I'm not ready, we're not there yet. I think the myth is to say we're going to get ready and then we'll do the program to get everyone on board. And I say, no, the program is going to get everyone aligned.
Yeah.
It's the other way around. If you wait until you're ready, you just know you're just never going to do it.
Yeah.
And while you wait, your patients are still getting an experience. So what experience are you giving them?
That's right. That's a very good point. And, it reminds me of one of the quotes from Charlie Kellman. Arthur, you remember this quote, while doctors debate, patients decide, right? And I think it applies here as well. And they'll decide to go to a clinic that better suits their customer needs, not just their surgical or clinical ones. They'll do that. And I'm concerned about doctors say, well, I'll wait, I'm not ready yet for this, this very reason. No, the world isn't waiting. Patients aren't waiting. They're deciding. So I think that's really, really important. And this notion of the role that the practice plays, everyone in the practice plays this. You're not the hero. If you're the doctor, the counselor, the optometrist, you're not the hero. You're the guide, and the patient is the hero. But besides that, and some key kind of first principles of how we want to treat patients coming in, Arthur, you had said every practice that does this is going to build a different version of it for them, just uniquely for them. 10 clinics are going to have 10 different experiences. I remember you saying that a few months ago. What would you add to that?
I think I'm just going to add a comment I've just seen Amanda make. I didn't realize Amanda was on the call. She wrote this, and I think she's 100% correct. I think the team learns a lot about the surgeon and leadership when they see them learning as equals. I mean, I think that's a superb comment because the surgeon typically is the person who has over years employed people, and they're always the senior person in the clinic, and they don't see them learning. We're learning on our own time. But yeah, you're learning something that you're not totally familiar with, and you're learning together. That's a super point.
And the benefit of this that we're seeing that practices are telling this is it comes out in phrases like, we're all on the same page and we weren't before. And it's because everyone might have a different idea about what patient experience could look like or should look like. But by going through this together, it brings that thing we call alignment. And that's what's so important if we want change to happen.
And Sharif, the other thing it does is because everyone's aligned and they're thinking about patient experience now in a different way, it's more structured, is whenever anyone gets an idea, it becomes public. They don't keep it in themselves. They share it with the group at either in their own staff session or in the general staff meeting. They'll share it. So as Liz said, at every single staff meeting, there's a section on patient experience. What's where we now? Are we where we want to be? And the answer is never, we're getting there. We're getting there is always the answer. It's never, we've reached it. We're always trying to improve on it.
Always trying to. Now, I have put something in the chat that I want everyone to look. You've got your chat button. And I also invite you, if you have a question, something you want to pose to Arthur or Celine or Liz or me, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we'll take as many as we can. We'll definitely be finished by the top of the hour. But for the moment, I also want to bring this slide up on your screen. And Celine, you can see that, right? You can see the slide?
Yep.
Okay, great. So for people who are hearing this and go, I want to learn more, we give you two paths that you can go. One is that next week on Tuesday, July 1st at 7:30 p.m. UK, 8:30 p.m. mainland Europe, and we scheduled this to be in between soccer matches.
It's Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday.
Is July 1st Wednesday? Forgive me. Is
Yeah,
that
I
right?
think so.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for helping me with that. Yes, July 1st is Wednesday. Thanks for the correction. We're going to go through PX90. We're going to do an overview. We're going to show the modules. We're going to show you how your team members access the content. And we're going to talk about how you get everyone participating at your practice. We'll go through cost and timing, how long this can take, because it's really designed to be very flexible how you want to do it. So you can just scan the QR code or write that down or get it out of the chat, and you can register for that. That'll be a similar format to this as a group call, group session. Or if you're like, I've heard enough, I get it, I want to do this, I want to look at this very seriously for our practice, you can schedule a call. That link, again, through the QR code or through the link at the bottom, or you see it in the chat, is a way that'll take you right to my calendar, and you can schedule a call, and we'll do it one-on-one using the same Zoom technology, but it's a way for me to get to know your practice better, and we'll do an assessment and see if PX90 can help you, because the last thing I want is for people to get something that isn't going to help them. We're only going to let you have it if it'll help you. We have Celine available as a coach, more in your time zone, which is really good. It's harder to schedule me as a coach, but I've now got coaches that are emerging in different countries to help us as we expand this worldwide. PX90 is now in 5 countries. It has been gone through by over 500 people in its first year. We are ready to translate it into other languages, both the video components and the workbook, the playbook itself. So don't let that, if you're sitting here and your native language is fill in the blank, we believe that we'll have the ability to translate it for you in that native language. And we think coaching is very important. You can do it alone. And actually, many practices in the States have done it by themselves. A few did take the coaching. But I think in Europe, I think it will help to have someone like Celine do this with you and guide you along the way and show you how you become the guide to the patients on their journey. I want to see if there are any questions that have come up that we can pose in our, okay. Zainab Hakimi, thank you. You can sign up for the group call, or you can sign up for for a one-on-one, or both. That's fine. You'll learn more either way. At the bottom of the 2 links that I put in the chat, you'll see a third link because Arthur, you mentioned forks. So I have to mention a great example on TV. You can find it somewhere. It's on Hulu in the US, but it's a show called The Bear. And it's about a gentleman. He's a chef, and he tries to create a fine dining restaurant. But this particular episode is about forks and the power of what is seemingly a very mundane task, but how that mundane task is really viewed in the context of what we're trying to do for our dining customers that evening, right? It is no different than the bricklayer building one of the great cathedrals in Europe, who could say, when you ask him what his job, oh, I'm a bricklayer, or I'm building a cathedral. Those are 2 very different attitudinal approaches to that same task. So I invite you to watch that. Any other questions that you have that you'd like to ask, just type them into the chat, and we'll be happy to take them because we've got a few minutes left. While we're waiting to see that, Celine, anything that you want to say in closing to encourage listeners?
Yeah, I think what's really great, it's a framework. It's not a script, You're not copying anyone. We said that before. And as Arthur said, same program, different clinics, the outcome will be different, but it will adapt to the culture and it will actually help you to find your culture probably. And, I had people having concern about saying me it's American, but I tend to say patient experience is universal and they have the same expectations, and every patient will remember how you made them feel, whatever your country is or whatever your specialty is. So we need more first followers after Wellingtons, and we're really looking forward. We're going to work more.
No question. And I'll just add a comment on that, this notion of culture. Culture is the single hardest thing to change in any organization or any group. It is the single hardest thing to change, but it is the most powerful once it does. And Arthur, would you agree that PX90 has done something? It has helped you shift your culture. Is that a fair statement for Wellington?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, my closing comment would be thank you for reaching out about 18 months ago and saying, are you interested in this? And I thought about it because our clinic operates well. Celine knows the clinic for the last 10 years. It operates well. But Celine will be the first one to tell me sometimes when there are things that could be better. And I was keen on doing it as a team. And there's absolutely no question, taking a clinic that was very well structured, very well run. As I said earlier, Liz is a superb clinic manager. She's got the entire skill set. But our culture has improved. There's no question about it. And as you say, that is the most difficult thing to structure, the most difficult thing.
And actually, just to add on that, and again,
Please.
it's building on what you're saying, Celine, that it's probably to create it. You're right in that our session when we did the PX90, one of the things we actually included was a conversation or a piece around let's define our Wellington personality. So being respectful of the fact that the team all have individual personalities and we want them to be able to show those personalities in their interactions with patients. But we came together and we were able to say, if the Wellington Eye Clinic had a personality, how would we want that to be described by the patients? And so the team, again, from a buy-in point of view, the team were all able to contribute their words. We had a lovely mishmash of words, and we were able to put that into an AI tool and develop out our full personality. So much like we have our mission statement, we actually developed what we want the patient experience and the team personality to be, and then to make sure that what we're doing is aligning with that. So it definitely did have a really positive impact on the culture.
Well, and I imagine how it's made your job more fulfilling because it's not just you anymore that's doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And genuinely, Arthur's right. People are, the way where my office is located and open door, people just literally stop and be like, I had an idea. I actually just thought of this, or do you mind if I come in and say this just before it goes out of my mind? And so it has become very much an ongoing conversation.
I want to also just say that, for me, Arthur, you were one of the first to read my book when we were able to get you a copy when it came out. And what drove PX90 was two things. First of all, doctors read the book and they said, do you have some type of training? Because yes, we like these ideas. Can you help us? I needed to answer that. And secondly, I needed to spend time inside a clinic myself. For some of for the last 6 years, I've been the CEO of Laser Eye Center of Silicon Valley here in the Bay Area. We're a pure refractive practice. We do the laser procedures and the lens procedures, but there's no insurance, there's no Medicare. And so every person walking through that door is a potential paying customer or not. And I work closely with Dr. Craig Bindi, the owner, but the first 4 years of that gave me such a different perspective than what I had in the 30 plus before that about what it takes to be successful in a practice. It grounded me. It humbled me. I understood the pain that Celine had when she was in operations, what Liz goes through every day, what Arthur, you go through as a leader. So I became the chief executive officer and the chief experience officer and helped improve us. We took many of the principles in the book. This became the laboratory that led to the creation of PX90. My goal and my mission is simply to help see patients and teams have much better experiences in every medical practice around the world, not just refractive, not just elective. And I'm already getting interest from concierge medicine groups, chiropractic, spine surgeons, radiologists, which is great. So I ask all of you who are on this call, if you're interested, look into this. Be, as Celine said, a first follower in this movement. Be early in this movement. You will benefit. you will get, as I said on this slide, I'm just going to bring it up once again. You will have a happier team. Your patients will have a better experience, and you as a physician will experience more joy in your chosen profession. I'm seeing this. I'm hearing this from people that are longtime doctor friends and people that I've just met who found me and said, and they took their team through the program, doctors. So I encourage you to do it. It's a beautiful thing. It is, Arthur, I told you my book was my love letter to doctors. And if I follow that up with what is this, maybe it's the movie. Maybe this is the movie that's the toolkit to help. It's been where I've been all my life. My dad was a physician, so it's just a pleasure. And I want to thank you, Arthur, you, Liz, and you, Celine, and everyone on this call for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. It really means a lot to me. It means a lot to Arthur because he is right lockstep with me about patient experience need to spread around the world. And let's start in refractive surgery, but let's be the role model for other specialties out there because we can and we should. And with that, I'll just say at 11:50, I said it was a 50-minute masterclass. We're coming in there. And, Jeanette, there was a question.
Say, wait. Yes.
Okay. And there is a question. How much time is needed to see the benefits on the team and so on the patient experience? I'll let Liz, how much time is needed? You tell us.
So I would say there was definitely an instant benefit or I suppose engagement on the day from the team. But I think it was really important and I would recommend to anybody, I think no more than if you're someone who likes a to-do list and sometimes you pick the easy things on your to-do list first and sometimes you leave the hard ones for a while. But I think it was important for me to structure the session in such a way that there were some quick wins for the team so that they could feel us picking up momentum. And so throughout the session, we picked, like I said, the short, medium and long-term goals. But the short-term ones where we happened to do the session on a Friday, they were things that we implemented on the Monday. And so that meant, I suppose, there was a sense of satisfaction for the team and also for me. But it meant then that we had those things, they were implemented straight away. We then revisited at our next staff meeting and looked at the medium term ones and we said, okay, now we've ticked off all of those quick wins. Where are we at with the medium term ones? What are the barriers to be able to achieving those? What do we need to do? And so we just tick them off one by one. And again, the long-term ones are ones that we are, even for some of them, still working on. But I think it is really important for each of the sessions, we said, what's the thing we can change tomorrow? What's the thing we can change in a couple of weeks? And maybe we might need to order something or purchase something or maybe do some sort of training. And then what's the thing that we'd like to ultimately work towards as the kind of long term?
So Nab, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. And, the answer is it's immediate. But what we're doing now is we're creating visibility and awareness to something that we just used to kind of talk about, right? Every once in a while, and nothing ever happened, right? Intention did not equal impact. Now we have impact. We create visibility. We create accountability so that if someone brings up an idea, like Arthur said, it may not be a good one, but it's going to get listened to and it's going to get evaluated along with the other ideas. And when we do that, we make it safe for the employee to speak up, particularly those ones that don't like to talk very much, because everyone has great ideas. The doctor is either back in the exam room or in the operating room. That's where the doctor belongs. They're not seeing what's happening in 80% of the practice. That's why every employee in a medical practice is a gold mine, because they have eyes and ears as to what's happening all day long. And if we just give them the opportunity to speak and to communicate and to offer, we're all going to be better off. And that's why I think people deep down feel like, wow, the employee's saying this was good for me too. They listened to me. Even if my idea wasn't very good, they listened to me. There's a certain joy in that. And if we can make our offices better places to work, my gosh, what a beautiful thing. Because healthcare in general has a really bad grade right now. I'm not talking about anyone's practice on this call. I'm just taking in general. And those stereotypical things that make it a bad experience don't need to be there. And we're trying to eradicate them now. So that's it. That's great. That's good. Okay. I don't see any other questions. So we took a few more minutes. Celine, Arthur, Liz, any other comments?
No,
thanks
just
very much.
really looking forward to help everyone achieving that.
Very good. Well, we are here to support you. And this recording is going to be made available to everyone if they want to watch it again. But again, you have the opportunity to set some time with us to learn more about it next week on Wednesday, the 1st of July, or a private call with me, and Celine will join if she can. All right.
I
Okay.
encourage everyone on the call to look into it. It doesn't matter how big a practice is, how small it is, what you're in. If you can make the experience better for a patient, you can make the employee experience better. And at the same time, on your own time, you can take a year to do this, 1 module a month. You can take 12 weeks. You can take 12 days if you like. It's completely up to you. I think it's an amazing tool to really up the ante for us. So thank you very much, Sharif and Celine, very much.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Okay,
Farewell.
guys. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.